Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Federal Republic of Brazil and the Brazil Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai, I would like to welcome you all to a very special event. I am André Castro, Media Liaison Officer of the Brazil Pavilion. In a few moments, we will receive our distinguished guest, the Vice-President of Brazil, Hamilton Mourão. Before we begin, I would like to invite all guests to take their seats and put their mobile phones in silent mode. Also, allow me to inform that all participants have received cards to address questions regarding the subjects covered by His Excellency, the Vice President of Brazil. We strongly recommend that you don't wait until the end of his presentation to write down your questions and hand it over to our staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here not because of the path that lies behind us. We are here to unveil the path for the future. Expo 2020 Dubai is indeed the stage in which ideas that will shape the future will flourish. And after nearly 2 years of a world pandemic, mankind can once again gather in celebration and experience a journey towards new challenges. To begin, we are going to show a video about sustainability in Brazil.
A great nation is formed by men who revere its origins. It's a nation that prepares for the future by protecting and preserving its riches. A nation that believes in sustainability, founded in the balance between economic, social, and environmental development. A great nation defends its natural heritage with robust and rigorous legislation, including a forest code that sets the example for other countries. A great nation has its government focused on the sustainable production of food and the defense of the environment. A government that promotes bioeconomy and cherishes the vocations, futures, and culture of its regions, as these form the driving force of development. Great nations are committed to the reduction of deforestation. They have leaders who respect traditional peoples. They maintain in its framework an agency such as the National Council of the Legal Amazon, tasked with taking care of the world's most well-preserved forest. A great nation knows that farming and animal husbandry are the key to feeding not just its people, but also those in other countries. It's open to negotiations so that companies from across the globe may contribute with their development and work for the protection of their people. A great nation takes pride in being on the right track for growth, protection, and preservation. Pride in boasting in its anthem, as well as in the soul of every man and woman, gigantic by its very nature. Your future mirrors your greatness. This great nation is Brazil.
Mr. Vice President Mourão is a retired Army General, which is the highest position in the military rank a Brazilian officer can reach in peacetime. He was elected Vice President of Brazil in 2018 in the same ticket of President Jair Bolsonaro. Since February 2020, he is also the Chair of National Council of the Legal Amazon region. Without further ado, I would invite you all to stand to receive His Excellency, Mr. Vice President of Brazil, Hamilton Mourão. Mr. Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. Mr. Simonas Guenvilas, Minister of the Environment of Lithuania, Ambassador Fernando Igreja, our representative to the United Arab Emirates, members of the Diplomatic Corps and representatives of foreign nations, Mr. Gilson Machado, Minister of Tourism of Brazil, representatives of the business community and research institutes, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. The opening of the Expo Dubai shows that the world is finally overcoming the worst phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. As we gradually resume major public events, we are encouraged to reflect upon our common challenge and work together to ensure greater sustainability and opportunity in the future. Even under the difficult circumstances imposed by the worst pandemic in a century, President Bolsonaro has continuously reaffirmed our commitment to sustainable development. Reestablishing the National Council of the Legal Amazon in February last year was a decisive step to meet our national policy goals and to fulfill our responsibilities in the global struggle against climate change. We are building upon values cherished by all Brazilians, such as freedom, justice, and shared responsibilities. Our mission is to bring together all levels of government, private sector, and other stakeholders to ensure peace, preservation, and sustainable development in the Amazon. Brazil will celebrate 200 years of its independence in less than a year from now. On September 7th, 2022, we will have the opportunity to take stock on what we have achieved as an independent country and to set the course to face the pressing issues of the 21st century. President Bolsonaro and I were elected in 2018 as part of a vigorous movement to rebuild our country's credibility and efficiency. The Brazilian people has called upon their leaders to adopt new policies after decades of economic mismanagement, corruption scandals, and public deficits. From the outset, our government has worked on a modern strategy of market-oriented policies, putting forward an agenda of fiscal responsibility and structural reforms. Such policies are cementing our pathway to long-term sustainable growth, contributing to enhance economic resilience and creating new opportunities for private investments. New legislation on issues like basic sanitation, public bids, natural gas market, and the energy sector have recently been approved, improving the legal framework for concessions and the selling of public assets. Private investments will be the driving force for a new sustainable development cycle, consistent with pivotal values such as freedom, justice, and shared responsibility. By the time we celebrate our 200 years of independence, I'm confident that we will have taken decisive steps to enable Brazil to fulfill its manifest destiny to be the largest and most vibrant, prosperous, and sustainable democracy in the Southern Hemisphere. The Amazon figures as one of the greatest challenges in this encompassing effort to renovate our country. We share public concern with illegal deforestation and the predatory occupation of the Amazon territory. We are mobilizing all available means to fight environmental crimes and to foster sustainable development in the region. We are encouraged to learn that there are many public and private initiatives that are making sustainability a very profitable business in the Amazon. A nation committed to sustainability. Sustainability has inspired the Brazilian pavilion in the Expo Dubai because it's a core value to our society and an essential requisite for the generation pact in this 21st century. Brazil has a clean energy matrix, one of the world's largest programs for renewables, a competitive and sustainable agriculture, and we also take part actively in multilateral negotiations on sustainable development, climate change, and biodiversity. The Brazilian agriculture is a pillar for global food security. Our producers are responsible to provide affordable and healthy food for more than 1 billion people worldwide. The agribusiness sector invests in technology to ensure the traceability and sustainability of its production chain, following the highest quality standards and the environmental, social, and governance criteria. We have hosted 2 United Nations conferences on sustainable development, the Rio 92 Earth Summit and the Rio Plus 20. President Bolsonaro has continuously reaffirmed our goal to curb illegal deforestation by 2030, and he anticipated our commitment to achieve carbon neutrality from 2060 to 2050. We hope the issue of climate finance will be properly addressed at COP26, ensuring the effective channeling of resources to support our climate-related efforts. Developed countries should also fulfill their environmental financial commitments, since they have a historical responsibility as the main emitters of greenhouse gas. Furthermore, we look forward to an agreement on an effective framework for carbon market. It is critical to promote the payment for environmental service in the Amazon, to allow the implementation of conservation and reforestation projects in rainforests. Our historical commitment to sustainability and the renewed impulse to market-oriented practice have converged to a new policy for the Amazon. Well, this is the Amazon area. To protect and develop the Amazon, we should understand its diversity and learn about the conditions faced by the 28 million Brazilians living there. The Amazon shelters the largest biodiversity reserve on the planet. So far as today is said that only 5% is known by all of us. Still 95% are to be discovered. But the population that lives at this place presents the lowest level of human development in our country. The entire rainforest has 6.5 million of square kilometers, encompassing the territories of 9 countries: Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. The Brazilian Amazon region has this feature. It's called the legal Amazon. The legal Amazon was a structure that was created in the year that I was born, 1953, by former President Getúlio Vargas, as a way to develop this whole region of Brazil. The legal Amazon has 5.2 million of square kilometers. It would be the 6th largest country in the world. The Amazon biome, the rainforest itself in Brazil, has 4.2 million of square kilometers. Imagine this. Half of this area is of conservation units and indigenous lands. Also, it's important that you understand that our forest code only allows that a property in the Amazon area can be explored only by 20%. 80% has to be preserved. The Amazon has two different areas, the Western Amazon and the Eastern Amazon, with two big states, Amazonas and Pará. Each one of these states has a little bit more than 1 million square kilometers. Imagine the government of this place to control all of this in the middle of a jungle where the roads are the rivers, because there are very few roads in this area. So the Eastern Amazon comprises the states of the states of Rondônia, Acre, Amazonas, and Roraima. And the eastern part, the north of Mato Grosso, Pará, the west part of Maranhão, and Amapá. I want to show some figures to you. For instance, this region here in the northwest part of Brazil, in the border with Venezuela and Colombia, it's called the Dog's Head. I lived here 2 years. There is a town here named São Gabriel of Cachoeira. This is all indigenous land, more than 600 communities. The distance in a straight line from this city here to Manaus, that's the state capital, is 800 kilometers, a 2-hour flight. If you go by the Negro River, Black River, it's 4 days up river and 3 days coming down, a travel of 1 week. So, in the Amazon, we don't measure the time by hour. We measure the time by days and by weeks, because the distances are huge and everything is so huge here. The indigenous communities have the full support of our government, and there are still many groups that live in isolation from the rest of the country. The Brazilian government makes a great effort to provide to those communities basic services such as health, education, and security. In many cases, such service can only be delivered with the support of the armed force. Another example, right here in the tip of the nose of the dog, there is an army outpost called São Joaquim. There is an indigenous community here. And you reach this place by a small river called River Isana. This river has 9 waterfalls. So the travel from São Gabriel, the main city, to this community by the river takes 1 whole week. Because when you reach each one of these waterfalls, you have to take the boat outside of the water, put on your back, cross through the jungle, and then put the boat back on the water again. It's difficult. It's not easy. The eastern part of the Amazon, the state of Pará mainly, presents a very different reality, with well-established human settlements, large investments in sustainable infrastructure, and strategic research institutions. Most of the illegal deforestation and the environmental crimes are also concentrated in this area. It happens in an arch that we call humanization arch, that comes from this tip of the state of Acre, goes to the northern part of Rondônia, south of Amazonas, north of Mato Grosso, and south and east Pará. This is where the pressure over the forest happens, and where we are working heavily to stop the illegalities to happen. This is a deforestation graph. We are not here to hide nothing that is happening in our country. Regrettably, the sustainable development of the Brazilian Amazon has been hindered for many years because of a stalemate between those that see the forest as an obstacle to economic growth and those that believe the private sector is an enemy to the forest's integrity. We are no longer hostage to this false dichotomy. The forest is not an obstacle to development. However, the fight against illegal deforestation will continue to be an expensive cat-and-mouse game if we do not create sustainable development alternatives for the people in the region. In the past 2 years, Brazil has repeatedly employed the armed force in support of environmental agencies to fight illegal deforestation and environmental crimes, such as fires, illegal mining. Thanks to the joint efforts of the military and environmental agencies, we have managed to curb deforestation rates that had been increasing since the year 2012. You see that the highest points of deforestation happened until 2004. Then we started going down until 2012. It was our best year. Then it went up again. For the duration of its activities concluded in last April, Operation Green Brazil 2 was able to reduce deforestation rates, seizing record amounts of illegal wood and ore, as well as machinery, and imposing a substantial number of fines. Recent data from the DITER, it's our monthly alert system, indicates that deforestation rates fell by 32% in August this year in comparison with August last year. Estimate data for this month of September that finished last Thursday also indicate reduction. And the best result was the reduction of fires. The fires were reduced in 40% because this is the fire season. The second semester is the fire season in the Amazon. The result for the annual assessment of deforestation for cycle 2020-2021 will be announced later this month, and we expect to see a 5% reduction when compared to 2019-2020. We are being successful in reversing the deforestation trend and strengthening state capacity to fight environmental crimes more effectively. Environmental agencies in Brazil have suffered for insufficient personnel and budgetary cuts, which translated into less effectiveness in fighting illicit logging and criminal fires. As part of the federal government's commitment to rebuild state capacity in the Amazon, our main environmental agency, the IBAMA, was authorized to hire 500 new employees. Its last hiring process happened in 2013, 8 years without hiring nobody. These measures are key to enable bioeconomy initiatives in the region as they contribute to the effective implementation of our environmental law framework, in particular, our forest code. In the end, the success of our efforts will rely on a broad multi-stakeholder effort to launch a new cycle of green and inclusive development. The National Council of the Amazon region has been the centerpiece articulating a comprehensive strategy to protect, preserve, and develop the Amazon. The Council was, as I said before, reestablished by Mr. Bolsonaro in February last year. It is composed by 15 ministries and works closely with Amazon states and municipalities. From the outset, we have acknowledged the need to step up the fight against illegal deforestation and other environmental crimes, while also shaping a sustainable development plan for the region. We have engaged development banks, the private sector, and local producers and communities in this effort. Our goal is to create enabling conditions for the development of a sustainable production model that replaces predatory practices. 5 strategic policy goals guide the work of the Council. The first one, to enhance command and control operations in the Amazon, with a focus on the fight against illegal deforestation and the strengthening of federal environmental agencies. The second, to promote land tenure regularization and economic ecological zoning, which are necessary steps for more effective monitoring, control, and development policies. We have about 1 million families in the Amazon that they don't have the title of the land they live. That's a problem we inherited from a long time ago. To leverage public and private financial resource, including the payment for environmental service. To integrate information systems of different governmental agencies to ensure greater efficiency, transparency, accountability, and better governance. And to foster bioeconomy and innovation, allowing even the most remote areas of the Amazon to generate wealth and create jobs for its population. We truly believe that the public sector's role is to strengthen the rule of law and to provide incentives, ensuring a business-friendly environment for private actors to generate wealth, jobs, and creative solutions. Let's talk about bioeconomy. The sustainable use of the biodiversity is the path to promote a knowledge economy model in the Amazon. It offers a unique opportunity to expand business that combine environmental protection, economic growth, and social inclusion. The partnership between public and private stakeholders has the potential to channel investments into the bioeconomy sector, contributing to the sustainable use of biodiversity and making a difference in the lives of thousands of people. We are aware that government cannot replace the private sector's role. Companies, investors, producers, and entrepreneurs must lead a new cycle of green and inclusive growth in the Amazon. Public and private actors acknowledge the market potential for products and services from the sustainable use of forest resource. Existing value chains for food products, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals, for instance, can be improved or expanded, even in the short term. Degraded areas offer opportunities for new business models, combining the production of forest products with financial incentives for reforestation and ecosystem recovery. Brazil counts on a wide network of research institutions dedicated to investigating the sustainable use of Amazon biodiversity. They are the gateway for a forest-based knowledge economy in the region. It is important to stress that we, as government, have limited capacity to channel large sums to research and development projects, particularly in this post-pandemic scenario. In this context, private business should invest in a knowledge-based bioeconomy and support research activities. The aligning of financial incentives will accelerate the modernization and expansion of sustainable value chains in the Amazon. The Brazilian financial sector has taken major steps in this direction. Brazil's 3 largest private banks have launched a joint initiative providing great impulse for the bioeconomy agenda in the Amazon. At the regional level, the Inter-American Development Bank has launched the Amazon Initiative last March, in which a dedicated bioeconomy fund was created to leverage private sector engagement in the Amazon. In 2 weeks, I will participate in the opening ceremony of the World Bioeconomy Forum, which, for the first, will take place in the Amazon in the state of Pará. Bioeconomy and the payment for environmental service are critical to the paradigmatic shift that will put an end to the predatory extraction of forest resources. The Amazon Council is working to present and discuss sustainable development opportunities for the region. We are working closely with international partners such as the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Economic Forum, and the diplomatic community in Brasilia. As part of this effort, the Amazon Council organized in the past year 2 visits of heads of diplomatic missions and journalists so they could see for themselves the reality of the region and interact with local communities. Allow me to show this picture. It was taken last year in the visit that we made to the Western Amazon. This is the moment where the black waters of the Negro River meet the brown waters of the Amazon, now, here called Solimões. This is the west direction. The Amazon River comes from Peru, known as Maranhão, enters in Brazil, known as Solimões. And here, just at the side of the city of Manaus, when he receives the black waters of the Black River, he then turns to be the big Amazon River. This is a marvelous place to know. In that same day, we also saw a large boat factory which processed and frees the pulp from the acai berry that is sourced directly from local producers upriver. The acai boat factory is a private investment. It has 2,000 square meters and works on solar power. The rivers are the avenues for drainage of products coming from the Amazon forests. The acai represents a fast-growing bioeconomy chain throughout the region. In mid-September this year, less than 1 month ago, I took a second group of heads of diplomatic missions to visit several projects and companies in the Eastern Amazon, in the state of Pará, the most populated in the region. They learned about initiatives dedicated to sustainable mining, renewable energies, public health, environmental conservation, and the great potential for bioeconomy-related investments. We visit a new cocoa processing factory in the municipality of Altamira. For you to know the huge space of the Amazon, this municipality, Altamira, has 160,000 square kilometers. It's bigger than Portugal. It is also a private investment, the first of its kind in the region, and it follows the high standards of quality, including ESG standards. The factory is adding value to the local bioeconomy production, creating well-paid jobs and promoting reforestation in the municipalities with the highest rates of deforestation in the region. Governments have the main responsibility in protecting the environment in our countries, but the sustainable development, particularly in the Amazon, will only succeed with greater engagement from the private sector and other stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 180 days, Dubai will be the global center for human culture and a stage to debate key challenges facing humankind. Countries and companies have joined forces to present their best in this expo. Brazil is dedicating its pavilion to foster sustainability. The bioeconomy development model is not a novelty in Brazil. We have large experience. Since the 70s, with our renewable energy program to produce ethanol, as well as from biotechnologies embedded in the agro-industry, pharmaceutical, and other sectors. Many of those companies are gradually directing their expertise and resource to expand bioeconomy value chains. The sustainable development of the Amazon is a critical element in our vision for the future of our country. The strategy led by the Amazon Council is full of opportunities for private and public actors to strengthen and expand sustainable business. At every step of this process, I meet new partners and learn about new solutions and opportunities for the Amazon. As the Spanish poet Antonio Machado said, "Travelers, there is no path. The path is made by walking." I call upon international institutions, investors, and leaders from the private and public sectors to meet the challenge and join us on this path. Shukran.
We would like to thank you all for the many questions received. While we give Mr. Vice President a few moments to sit down and drink some water, we would like to invite all of you to come visit the Brazil Pavilion, which is very close to where we are right now. We are sure you will be delighted with its architecture, shop, coffee place, and restaurant. Mr. Vice President, we have received several questions, and I would start with, what are the expected results of your visit to the UAE, and how can bilateral relations support the Amazon?
Well, in the last years, Brazil and UAE have strengthened their relationship, and since 2019, when President Bolsonaro came here, we became strategic partners. We see UAE as a big group of investors, a knowledge-based economy that belongs to this country. This country, it's example for most of us. And so, investing in the Amazon, it's very important. And like I told during my lecture, it's the attraction of investors of all around the world, mainly in the bioeconomy projects, will be decisive to keep the people who live in the Amazon with capacity to have a better life, creating jobs, and so that they can have their earnings and they live a good life. And UAE, it's one good friend, and our partnership has all the possibilities to go forward, and that's the way I see this moment that I'm here in the inauguration of the Brazilian Pavilion. And I remember that more 40 days in the Brazilian Day, that will be the 15th of November, President Bolsonaro will be here with a large group of private companies, private enterprise, and politicians and other members of the Brazilian government.
We have a question from Antonio Neves from Brazil. Mr. Vice President, how can the private initiative may lead to sustainable development and the reduction of the social gap in the region?
Well, thank you for the question. I spoke a lot about bioeconomy. Bioeconomy, to work out, are three factors. The first is to map the chains, the value chains. I mentioned the acai, but there are a lot of other chains of value in the Amazon. So we have to map this, and the private sector is important because government has not a very large space and budget for research and development, and to map this is necessary research and development. Then comes the infrastructure. Infrastructure in the Amazon means that the rivers have to be well placed, the river beds must be okay. And this is the private and public sector can work together in this. And also in building ports. In many of the small towns in the Amazon and at the margins of the rivers, the ports are very bad, or maybe they don't exist. So that's the second point. And the third point for bioeconomy is attracting investments. So these three aspects are those who will make bioeconomy advance, make the Amazon region a rich one, exploring the huge biodiversity that we have there. But public and private sector have to work together. And once again, I say that the public sector has to be responsible for a good business, business environment. Has to have a good business environment. That's the main question for the public sector to work, and then the private sector comes with the investments.
We have a question from Record TV in Brazil. How to deal with the bad eco-image of Brazil regarding preservation, and what's the main challenge for preservation, education, legislation, or enforcement?
Well, I tried to show you how huge the Amazon area is. The Amazon is not well connected with the central part of Brazil. During a large period of our history, it stood out there with few people living there. And only in the 70s of the last century, we started a real occupation of the Amazon. Of course, when this happens, mainly in the 20th century, now the 21st century, the standards are totally different. And the world has its eyes for what's happening in the Amazon. So the first point is the Brazilian government has to do its part to make the law to be fulfilled. Okay? We have a very comprehensive forest code. Like I told you, only 20% of a property can be explored in the Amazon. For instance, for you to see, if you remember the map, the state of Roraima, 70% of the state of Roraima are whether indigenous lands or conservation units. They only can use 30%. 20% of 30%, it's 6%. So we have to enforce this all time. Indigenous lands, conservation units have to be preserved at all costs. So operations of command and control, education for the people who live there, because most of them are very poor educated. They have very low standards, so it's a responsibility of the government. And, of course, to show to the international community that we are not giving up our responsibilities, that we will work hard to keep the forest. Today, we have some 85% of the forest like it was since the beginning of the time. So if we go to a mere mathematical count, we have still 5% to the forest, nothing more than that. The other 80% has to be kept afloat. The trees cannot be cut. So that's our job. That's what the Brazil has to do. And of course, Brazil has to go to every international forum, show its face, discuss the problem, show how it is. We are not beggars, of course. That's the way we have to behave. But make clear that the state, the Brazilian state, now represented by our government, will fulfill its tasks.
We have a complementary question from the same TV channel. Can you estimate the financial benefits of preservation and the development of the image of Amazon?
This is a question that has been discussed in a lot of forums. There is one number that people from the private sectors, mainly from the banks, have been telling me since I began my work in the National Council of the Legal Amazon, that we should receive as payment for environmental service around $10 billion a year. I think that's a good payment for what we are going to do in the Amazon, for our responsibility in the Amazon. Because has to be clear, okay, if we have to preserve almost 50% of our territory, okay, we have to receive support for this. That's a normal question, because other countries already explored all what they could in their countries. And we still have this large space, one of the largest spaces still open on Earth, and of course we know that it's our responsibility to preserve. So the estimates of the numbers that people from the private sector tell me is this $10 billion a year, but it's a thing that has to be discussed, and in our opinion, the Brazilian government opinion, now in COP26, it's one of the main points that the Brazilian government is going to put on the table of discussions.
We have an unidentified question. Mr. Vice President, what is the role of global civil society in supporting the protection of Amazon?
Well, I used to say that pillars of civilization are, one, the Generations Pact, extremely important in this 21st century, because we have to pass this earth that we live in such good conditions to our sons and grandsons. That's the responsibility of our generation. This is one of the pillars. One other pillar is a strong civil society. And why I say a strong civil society? Because a strong civil society will pressure its government to fulfill its tasks. And we as government have to understand this. It's our responsibility. Once we are elected, we have to fulfill what people were expecting when they cast their votes for us. And we have to understand this, and we understand this. So that's the main point that I want to make sure, that civil society has to press. We live in a pressing age because, as one writer said, we live with a triple revolution. The revolution of the more, the revolution of the mobility, and the revolution of the mentality. The revolution of the more, that makes a lot of pressure over governments because everybody receives information. Maybe even people who are poorly educated, they have a cell phone connected with the internet, and he receives a lot of information, whether by their own net or for a social media, that a group that he belongs, and everybody asks the governor, what are you doing? So I myself, I don't bother with that. I think we have to be pressured. We have to, people have to say, well, you have to do this, do this. So that's the way I see what civil society has to do.
This is our last question, Mr. Vice President, and it comes from the Consul of Peru, Mr. Marco Antonio Santibanez. What are the plans to protect the Amazon in cooperation with neighbor countries?
Well, since the beginning of the work of the National Council of the Legal Amazon, we saw that the Amazon Treaty Organization was almost was not heard. And I think all the countries that share the Amazon rainforest have to put power on this organization. It's the unique multilateral organization in South America that has this task to protect and to preserve and to develop the whole Amazon area. So I've been working with the representatives in Brazil. There is the secretary, the actual secretary, it's a Bolivian diplomat, Mrs. Alexandra, and there is one Peruvian diplomat also working there. So we are strengthening the role of this organization. And of course, we have each country, Brazil and each one of the Amazon countries, we have some bilateral meetings that are important for problems that are similar in both countries. There are problems that happen in every Amazon country, but others are, for instance, between Brazil and Peru, Brazil and Colombia, Brazil and Venezuela. So we are working on this process. And when I invite ambassadors to go to the Amazon, I make clear that the presence of the neighboring ambassadors, the first time I took the Peruvian ambassador, the Colombian ambassador, it's very important for them to be with us and to work with us in this moment where the eyes of the international community are all put in the Amazon area.
With the last answer, we would like to thank you all for coming today and wish you all the best Expo 2020 experience.
For your presence and for the questions that we are asking. I hope that I fulfilled what we were expecting to hear today. What I want to make sure is the full commitment of the Brazilian government with the protection, preservation, development. I'm not even saying sustainable development because today there is only sustainable development in the Amazon. Thank you. you.